All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our RBT exam practice question series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Following a stressful 2 weeks of final exams, Sarah decides she is going to give up drinking coffee for 1 month. The first 2 days are easy, but after a week, Sarah starts to desperately crave coffee in the morning. What principle explains Sarah's craving? So be careful here, right? We're looking at Sarah's craving, and Sarah is craving what? Well, we know she's craving coffee. And why? Because after 2 weeks of final exams, she says she is going to give up drinking coffee for a month. Now, after 2 days, it was easy, but the longer Sarah went without coffee, the more she craved drinking coffee. So the motivation to drink coffee and the value of coffee increased the more time Sarah went without it. So, what do we call it when it's related to a motivating operation when we are limiting somebody something or not allowing somebody to have something? And that's what's happening here. Sarah is limiting her access to coffee. She's not accessing coffee, making it more valuable. A, satiation. Satiation is the opposite of what we're talking about. Satiation occurs when we have too much of something. If you eat too much pizza or eat too much cake, you might not want pizza or cake for a while. You've satiated yourself on it. The value of that cake or pizza goes down. In this case, though, Sarah has done what? She's deprived herself. Sarah is now deprived of coffee. And deprivation alters motivation for engaging in behaviors and for consequences. The less Sarah has coffee, the more value it holds. Sarah has deprived herself of coffee, making it more valuable, making Sarah crave that coffee. What about extinction? Well, we're looking at Sarah's craving. And when we're talking about motivating operations and deprivation, those are antecedents. Now, extinction is going to be the consequence. So, whatever Sarah does in response to wanting this coffee, and then the consequence for what she does, that's going to be either reinforcement, extinction, or punishment. We're not looking at the consequence here. We're looking at that antecedent, which is causing Sarah's craving. So it's not going to be extinction, not going to be punishment. Those are the consequences. We're looking at the idea that Sarah is deprived of coffee. So the principle explaining Sarah's craving is deprivation. An analyst wants to measure how often employees check personal social media sites during work hours before introducing any new company policy. For 1 week, the analyst records the number of times employees access social media without implementing any interventions. Which term best describes the data collection period before introducing the new policy? Pretty straightforward question, right? The question wants to know about this data collection prior to this new policy. Now, we're looking at data collection in this context. The analyst is trying to measure how often employees check social media. And so, what kind of data is the analyst taking? Well, the analyst starts to collect the number of times they access media without any interventions. So, the data collection the analyst is doing is happening prior to any interventions starting. So, what do we call data collection before we actually go into an intervention? Well, we're going to call that baseline data. Baseline data is going to give us an idea of where we're starting. In the analyst case, they're going to get an idea of how often the employees are checking social media. Once they have that information, then they can design that intervention, or if the intervention is already designed, then they can implement the intervention. So a baseline graph may look like this. Our baseline is going to be here, where we have no intervention, and then we implement intervention and we expect some sort of change. Data collection prior to intervention is going to be that baseline data. Why is it not a functional assessment? Well, the functional assessment encompasses everything, right? We're doing indirect assessments, direct assessments, maybe functional analyses. That's not occurring here. This is just some data collection. For what it seems is the analyst has already done a big assessment, and now they just need that baseline data prior to intervention. They're not actually in C intervention. They're taking data prior. They haven't implemented any interventions yet. Baseline is before intervention. And then D, maintenance. Well, maintenance is after intervention. So maintenance might occur here if we can change behavior and it continues. So we might have a baseline, we go to intervention, we try to maintain. That's typically how we want things to look. So if we're taking data prior to a new policy, prior to intervention, that's going to be A, baseline data. A restaurant manager notices a server repeatedly arrives late. To understand why, the manager observes the server's behavior, interviews them and coworkers, and reviews clock-in data. Afterward, the manager identifies that the server is seeking more flexible hours because of a second job, which impacts punctuality. Which process did the manager conduct to determine the reason for the server's late arrivals? It's kind of a long question with a lot going on, but if we attack the question like we always do, not going to be that difficult. We're looking at what the manager did to determine why the server was late. And when we're trying to determine why behavior happens initially, and when we have a new behavior that arises, what are we going to perform? Well, in this case, the manager does what? They observe the server's behavior. We've got a direct assessment. They interview coworkers. So we've got some sort of indirect assessment. And they're also reviewing clock and data, which also might qualify as maybe an indirect assessment. So they're doing all kind of assessing. They're doing interviews. They're reviewing data. They're actually observing the behavior. So we've got direct assessments. We've got indirect assessments. And we have all these assessments working together. What is that going to be a part of? A task analysis. Well, a task analysis is how we create a task chain when we take a behavior and we break it into smaller steps. Clearly, that's not what is happening here. This is not about a task chain or a task analysis. B, reinforcer assessment. Again, the manager is not trying to look at what might reinforce the server. They're looking at why it's happening. Why is the server engaging in the behavior? So what they're doing is a functional behavior assessment. Now, if you look at D, we do have some indirect assessments going on, but we also have direct assessments, right? So D is partially right, but C is a much better answer. It's much more complete. And we always want the complete and best answer. The process the manager is conducting to determine the reason for the server's late arrivals is C, a functional behavior assessment. Celine is a volunteer coordinator at a local nonprofit. She brings fresh pastries and coffee to morning volunteer sessions, chats with volunteers about their interests, and assists them with tasks. Over time, volunteers look forward to working with Celine and respond enthusiastically whenever she gives directions. What strategy is Celine likely using to increase volunteers' positive association with their presence? You'll notice we ask a lot of questions that aren't necessarily related to you as a technician working with the client, because behavior analysis and ABA in practice applies to our daily life. You really want to get good at ABA, get good at the exam, and know this stuff, you have to apply it to your everyday life. So put yourself in Celine's shoes if you're a new technician on a job and going meet a client. What strategy is Celine using here? She is working at this nonprofit and she's bringing pastries and coffee. She's talking with them. She's building interest. She's assisting them. And over time, what do? Well, they look forward to working with Celine. As a technician, you want to achieve that with your clients. You want your clients to look forward to you coming to their house, or they want to look forward to coming to see you at, let's say, a clinic. How do we do that? We build rapport. What is the purpose of building rapport? What is the strategy call that Celine is using? A, non-contingent reinforcement. Now be careful. Yes, she is bringing pastries and coffee, but there's no clear indication that that's reinforcing to anyone, right? We're not sure. They are looking forward to working with Celine, but non-contingent reinforcement is a systematic approach where we're working on a fixed or a variable schedule to provide reinforcement. So Celine isn't necessarily using a non-contingent reinforcement schedule. She's building rapport and pairing herself with all these great things, right? She's trying to increase this association with their presence by talking with them, bringing them things, assisting them. The same thing you're going to do as a technician. You're going to pair yourself with good things, things the client likes, so that they want to be around you and work with you. What about C, a response cost? Response cost is when we remove a reinforcer contingent on behavior. Obviously, Celine is not implementing a response cost for these at this local nonprofit. And then shaping. Shaping involves reinforcing approximations of behavior. Again, we're not looking at any necessarily specific reinforcement instances, so shaping doesn't fit. The strategy Celine is likely using is B, pairing. Every Monday at 8 a.m., Fresh Market emails you a collection of coupons that can be used at the store during the week. You typically use at least 2 of the coupons each week. What type of schedule does this most resemble? So let's think about this. We have a schedule question. And for our schedules of reinforcement, they can be fixed, they can be variable, they can be ratio, they can be interval. Fixed means they don't change. Variable means they're changing and are based on an average. Ratio is a response requirement. Interval is time. So here, let's start with, is it a ratio or an interval? Well, we know every Monday at 8 a.m., you get this email. This is time-based, right? Because the whole week, you can do whatever you want to do. You can engage in whatever response. It doesn't matter because the email comes at Monday at 8 a.m., no matter what. That's a fixed time, right? Every Monday at 8 a.m., that's fixed. It's time-based, making it an interval. It doesn't matter if you use the coupons or not. That email is getting sent to you every week, regardless of what you do during the week. So if we think about A and B, fixed and variable ratio, ratio is all based on your responses. Getting that email doesn't involve doesn't involve taking into account what you did during the week. You're getting that email no matter what. So it's going to be fixed interval, and it's not going to be a variable interval because variable implies it's changing. That time is set. Monday at 8 a.m., you're getting that email. You typically use at least 2 coupons each week, but what if you don't? Well, it doesn't matter. That email is still coming. It's fixed and it's based on an amount of time, in this case, weekly. What type of schedule does this most resemble? C, fixed interval. Thanks for watching. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. Subscribe if you haven't already. We really, really, really would appreciate it. If you want to support us, subscriptions really help us out. Be sure to let us know when you pass so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.